Outside the White House, hundreds of protesters rally against President Trump's latest intervention in D.C. governance. Chants of "Hands off D.C." and "Home Rule Now" fill Lafayette Square, as demonstrators decry federal overreach. The protest is a direct response to Trump's deployment of federal agents and his order to clear homeless encampments. On one side, angry residents demand local autonomy. On the other, law enforcement stands as a symbol of federal power. The standoff highlights deep national divisions over who controls the Capitol and how to address issues like crime and homelessness. As the president prepares to unveil his plan, the city braces for a prolonged and contentious struggle. President Trump's directives came via Truth Social, his preferred platform for communicating directly with his supporters and the nation. In a series of late-night posts, he called for urgent action, bypassing traditional channels and putting pressure on local officials to respond immediately. Trump demanded the immediate removal of homeless individuals from D.C. streets, insisting that they be relocated far from the Capitol, out of sight of lawmakers and tourists. The directive was clear: sweep the city clean, no matter the cost or the controversy it might spark. He posted images of sprawling encampments, framing the city as a symbol of urban decline and government failure. Trump argued that only his intervention could restore order and dignity to the nation's capital, painting a stark picture of chaos that demanded a strong response. Alongside the homeless crackdown, Trump announced a sweeping campaign against crime. He vowed to jail offenders swiftly, promising to restore law and order where, in his words, local leaders had failed the people. The message was uncompromising: zero tolerance for lawlessness. Supporters hail these moves as the return of decisive leadership, arguing that tough action is needed to reclaim the city's streets. They see Trump as a leader unafraid to make hard choices, willing to do what others won't. But critics see something very different. Human rights groups warn that forced removals and heavy-handed policing risk violating civil liberties and worsening the crisis for the city's most vulnerable. They argue that these tactics ignore the root causes of homelessness and crime and could lead to lasting harm. The president's actions have polarized the city, igniting fierce debate among residents. Some demand greater security and order, while others decry what they see as cruelty and disregard for basic rights. The city is now a battleground of competing visions for its future. The debate is no longer just about policy, it's about the very soul of the Capitol and what kind of city Washington, D.C. should be. The tension is palpable, with both sides digging in. Today's crackdown has deepened fears and intensified the standoff, leaving the city on edge and the nation watching closely to see what happens next. At the heart of the conflict is a battle over crime statistics and public perception. Trump claims D.C. is out of control, using high-profile incidents to justify calls for federal intervention. Mayor Bowser counters with data showing violent crime has dropped for 2 consecutive years, arguing the president is exaggerating for political gain. Supporters of Trump trust his tough rhetoric and strong stance, while city officials insist policy must be based on facts, not fear or sensationalism. Residents are caught between dueling narratives, one of chaos, the other of progress and hope. The truth is complex, but the fight over who defines reality is shaping the city's future. The stakes are high, and the city's reputation truly hangs in the balance. Federal law enforcement has flooded D.C. with over 450 officers and 120 FBI agents now patrolling the city. The White House claims early success, touting weapons and drug seizures as proof of the operation's necessity. The deployment is both practical and symbolic, a show of federal authority in the Capitol. The National Guard stands ready for activation, reporting directly to the president, not the mayor. Supporters see this as essential backup. Opponents fear it signals a dangerous militarization of city streets. The prospect of troops on the ground has escalated tensions, raising fears of confrontation with protesters. The president's willingness to use military force is a critical test of federal power in the Capitol. The next move could redefine the relationship between D.C. and the federal government. D.C.'s unique status means its autonomy is always at risk. Congress holds ultimate authority, and home rule is a privilege, not a right. This means that any self-governance D.C. enjoys can be revoked or altered by federal lawmakers at any time. The balance of power is delicate and often subject to the political climate of the moment. President Trump's actions exploit legal gray areas, using control over federal land and the National Guard to sideline local leaders. By leveraging these ambiguities, he can assert federal dominance in ways that undermine the city's elected officials and their authority. He can even take command of the city's police under emergency conditions, a term open to interpretation. This broad and vague definition allows for significant federal intervention, often without clear guidelines or oversight. A full federal takeover would require Congress, but Trump doesn't need that to exert control. His administration can influence local matters through executive orders and federal agencies, effectively bypassing the need for legislative approval. For DC's 700,000 residents, this crisis exposes their political vulnerability. They live in a city where their local government can be overridden by federal authorities at any moment. This precarious situation leaves them feeling disenfranchised and powerless. They pay taxes and serve in the military, but lack full representation. This contradiction fuels their frustration and drives their demand for greater autonomy and equal rights. The protest is about more than policy. It's a demand for equal rights and protection of hard-won autonomy. The residents of DC are calling for a recognition of their rights as American citizens. It's a demand for equal rights and protection of hard-won autonomy. The struggle for home rule is a fight for the very principles of democracy and self-governance. The struggle over home rule is now front and center, with national implications. The outcome of this battle could influence how other American cities are governed and their relationship with federal authorities. The outcome could set a precedent for federal intervention in American cities. This is not just a local issue, it's a national debate about the balance of power between local and federal governments. The president's orders directly impact DC's homeless, about 800 people living unsheltered, targeted for removal. Most of the city's homeless are already in shelters, but those on the streets form tight-knit encampments for safety. City officials have favored gradual engagement and trust building, but Trump's directive demands immediate clearance. Advocates question where people will go and whether the new facilities are humane or simply out of sight. The sudden sweep threatens to destabilize vulnerable lives, severing connections to outreach workers and community. Critics argue this approach is inhumane and ineffective, prioritizing appearances over real solutions. For those living on the streets, the federal crackdown is a looming threat to their survival. The DC crisis unfolds as President Trump prepares for a high-stakes summit with Vladimir Putin, a meeting that has captured the attention of both allies and adversaries around the globe. The stakes are higher than ever, as the world wonders what will emerge from this pivotal encounter between two powerful leaders. At home, the streets of Washington are alive with protest and tension, adding global scrutiny to domestic unrest. Demonstrators demand answers, while the eyes of the world's media capture every moment, amplifying the sense of urgency and uncertainty. International headlines, from escalating Middle East conflicts and shifting alliances to accusations against Israel, mean the world is watching America's response. Every decision made in Washington now reverberates far beyond U.S. borders, influencing diplomatic relations and shaping perceptions of American leadership. The president's upcoming press conference will reveal the full scope of his plan, offering a rare glimpse into the administration's strategy for navigating both domestic turmoil and international crises. The words spoken here will set the tone for the city's future, and perhaps for the nation's path forward in these turbulent times. Meanwhile, legal challenges from Mayor Bowser and city officials are expected, as local leaders push back against federal authority and seek to protect the rights of DC residents. The fight is moving from the streets to the courts, where the future of the city's autonomy and the limits of executive power will be tested in landmark legal battles. The outcome of these struggles will shape not just DC, but the very fabric of American democracy. The world is watching closely, as the nation's image abroad hangs in the balance. Allies and rivals alike are gauging America's resolve and its commitment to democratic values. The Capitol has become a battleground for democracy, public safety, and civil rights, a microcosm of the larger struggle playing out across the country. The question is no longer just who controls DC. It's about the future direction of the nation itself and the values it chooses to uphold. As protests continue and federal power grows, the city stands at a crossroads, with every action and reaction shaping the next chapter in American history. The world watches, waiting to see not only what happens next in Washington, but what kind of country America ultimately decides to be.